Hey everybody, welcome to your Friday, and this is Perch. I'm joined today by Clint Stoker. Hello, Clint.
Hello. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to join today. It's nice. We skipped last week, so hopefully everybody's having a good week. It's been a much quieter week, I would say, than we've had in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of funny with I don't know, just streaming and stuff. It's really hard to be consistent all the time because life happens.
Yeah, it is, and yeah, life certainly got in the way last week. I did notice YouTube pointed out to me that I think I've gone 1,000+ days now, or not 1,000 days, 1,000 videos in a row. There's been a video a day
Wow.
since April 1st, which is of 2019, which is nuts. But anyway, too much. Anyway, but it's enough about me. So, Clint, so thank you for joining me today. Right up the gate, I wanted to point out you've got a new title coming out, and some people are asking about the art in a little preview screen. That is from F.A.T.L. I'm going to throw a link up here at the bottom of the screen, but can you tell us a little bit about this book and what people can expect from it?
Yeah, so F.A.T.L or F-A.T.L is it's a story about an intergalactic exterminator. And so it sort of takes the idea of saving the planet, which has become a big time cliche in comics especially, and made it into a regular occurrence for this guy. So he's all sorts of crazy adventures always in over his head. But this particular story is about him going to a planet. He receives a call for help, and it seems like everyone there is perfectly happy and almost just enjoying the invasion and letting it happen to them. almost like a Stepford Wives kind of feel when he gets there. Quickly finds out that there's a big problem with an alien infestation, and he has to connect with some locals on the planet to get to the bottom of it.
It sounds like a great hook, and the art looks great. It looks very unique. It's got a kind of sci-fi, but we got it up on the screen now. This is the Indiegogo. Go check it out. The link's at the bottom. But quite a bit of material here, and you've got a lot of different options here for people who want to buy in. But here's kind of a look at what you're getting, which is really nicely detailed and nicely colored.
Yeah, that's all. So far, it's all Charlie Snogans. We've been looking for a colorist, but it's been it's hard. He's such a good artist, and the last thing that we want to do is just hire whatever colorist to throw on there. So we're trying to find the right colorist. He is amazing. I'm not even exaggerating. You can see it on the screen, but it's really cool because I consider him my favorite artist, and to be working with him is just amazing. He's got such a cool style. Every time I see it, it's Charlie Snogans, but it reminds you of probably a lot of other artists. It's funny, as we kind of have been on different streams, everybody has somebody different that they say his art reminds them of. But it's just gorgeous.
It is. I mean, there's a lot of detail on the page. It's they're not shirking on the backgrounds or anything. It's there's some work put into this. How many pages is this? Are you kind of aiming for the project?
So we're promoting it at 52 pages, but we're not above adding more for stretch goals. It really is kind of a big story, but we wanted to just see how it goes. Charlie is a professional artist, and so for him, this is a massive. It just takes a lot of time out of his schedule to be able to do this, and so we can get more pages if we reach some numbers. But yeah, right now 52 pages, which is not bad at all for these Indiegogo books.
No, not at all. I mean, one of the problems I have with some of the crowdfunded stuff, and it's on Kickstarter too, is that people will put out a 22-page comic or 20-page comic. In some cases, I saw a couple projects that have 18 pages, and then they've got like 12 pages of sketches, or they're doing that kind of Marvel thing where you get the comic, but then they'll reprint with just the pencils, and then they'll print in black and white. So it's like you're getting 60 pages, but you're really only getting about 20 pages of comic. And at $25, that's expensive. But when you're into that 50 page, now you're talking, roughly 50 cents a page. I don't think a lot of people do the math that way, but still, it feels like more of a value.
Yeah. And there's like, I've got this ideal of, I'd love to do 88-page graphic novels. I did my last series, Downcast. I just shipped out the book, and it was 88 pages on thick paper. It was like a really nice printed book, but it just felt like the right format. And so I want to get to there with all of my books. But for me, I'm relatively new, and so it's still, we're building up momentum to be able to do books like that. But yeah, that's where I see it with Indiegogo. Like the ideal for me is not 22 pages. That's not how I'd want to buy a comic. You know what I mean, on Indiegogo anyway. So
for sure. That's where I mean, when I hear people say in a lot of the streams, it's Indiegogo or Kickstarter is the future of all comics, and it's like, well, if you're doing things this size, this kind of format, I mean, I can kind of see it. But if you're talking about replicating the current monthly floppy kind of business model, it really doesn't make sense.
No.
So.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't want to take it off the rails or anything, but with Downcast, it's going to be published through Alterna Comics, and so the kind of direction again that I think would be great is having you release the trade paperback that is close to or traditional trade paperback length. You got it like 100 pages or so, and then you release floppies, newsprint floppies later. And so it's kind of like you got the movie release and then you have the DVDs later. So it kind of flips it on its head from, how comics have been traditionally done. Crowdfunding kind of enables that. So it would make sense, but it just takes such a money investment ahead of time to be able to do it. So
do you think, and then there's some great, there's some great questions here for you in the chat, but I want to ask you, so do you think that crowdfunding, kind of this model, can it be a stepping stone? Can it be a case where you get kind of the business fundamentals done, you get kind of a war chest of some cash, and then you start exploring other things, whether it's distributing through one of the box stores like a Barnes and Noble, if you can, or getting a distributor like I don't know if this content necessarily fits it, but going to do something Scholastic. Is there an end game where the crowdfunding kind of gets you some momentum, gets you some cash, and then you're able to explore some of these other options with a little bit more confidence? Is that a possibility?
Potentially. I haven't, that's so far down the road. If it's, I don't know enough about it, to be honest. And so getting into comic shops through Alterna Comics to me is that's a huge step, and that would not have happened. I don't think if I didn't have the crowdfunding to sort of, be able to confidently say I can do 4 issues, So I think it is a stepping stone to other things. What that looks like down the road, I'm not 100% sure. A lot of people ask me about, is it going to be available on Amazon down the road, things like that. And I'm not sure. Even with Downcast, I've got the in-demand store open, and right now that's how people are purchasing it, and I'm just kind of once a week shipping out orders. But it does feel like, to me, if you're developing IP and you're developing a story, the goal is you want as many people to be able to read it as possible. And I know crowdfunding, you have to be a certain kind of person. You're an early adopter, you know what I mean, if you're gonna be backing a crowdfunding campaign.
It's different. I mean, it's something people are getting used to, and it always, to me, it feels like a step to other things. But it's interesting. There's this dynamic with a lot of the, I don't know, and this, again, this is an odd analogy, but bear with me. It may take me a minute to get there. You've got a lot of distributors, a lot of publishers trying to get content for YA audiences out to the stores. Fine. There's a recognition that, hey, there's not enough content. Dogman announced today another 5 million first run for that book. And now I'm hearing more and more about, it's not just about YA, graphic novel content, standalone books, things like this. There's a need for it. And so I hear over and over people saying, there's just not enough content out in the market to do what we want to do. We need more content. So I hear that on one side, but on the other side, I see a lot of people like yourself and others producing that content, making it, but it feels like there's this wall between the two where you're making the content, you've got somebody who wants the content, but it's very difficult to get from point A to point B. And I'm curious, one, if you've run into that or you've heard any of this. I've been surprised this week with a lot of calls from different people asking for referrals for content. And it's just surprising because there's really mountains of people trying to do things with crowdfunding right now.
Yeah. I definitely think there's a bit of a disconnect in that Crowdfunding almost, it feels like it's in its own world. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yep.
it's often ignored. This is one of my big criticisms, but especially if you got a book on Indiegogo, it gets wholly ignored by even just the comics industry, let alone like if you start looking in books and publishing in general, which is strange because there's a lot of really successful books on there. By any metric, and so I don't know, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but I think it would take the right kind of people connecting, and I don't even know I wouldn't even know who those people are, to
Yeah.
sort of connect the dots, but I think there's, that's proven so far that there are a lot of people that are interested in new IP, a lot of these crowdfunded books, and I think maybe it'll take a little bit of time to tell if how long running they are. I know my son loves to read Dogman books,
Uh-huh.
and they're thick books. You get a big page count, and the art's very very simple, and it's they've done something to really aim it at younger kids, that's working. Again, he loves it. So tapping into that, I think, would be great. At the same time, with Indiegogo, it's like, because of the price point, because of generally your audience of people, you're more marketing to adults.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a case that we want to get to some of these questions. I'm seeing a lot of what I would say is pretty unknown authors, pretty unknown creators, people who maybe done one or two projects, starting to get book deals simply because there's a desperate need for content. But at the same time, meanwhile, you've got this pretty large host of creators. And by the way, it's unfortunately the whole Kickstarter and Indiegogo thing has slipped into politics. And I mean, there's it's like you're picking a side, but putting that aside for the moment, which is dumb, but putting that aside for the moment, you've got a bunch of people who are proving, regardless of what they choose, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, they're proving that they can actually market a book, deliver it. I mean, some can't, but then it's very public when they can't.
Yeah.
But you're able to get an audience, you're able to promote your book, you're able to understand the metrics. And so if you're a publisher, it just feels like that's a ready-made audience to tap rather than trying a pretty much unknown, untested creator who's gone through none of that. It's a very big disconnect.
And for publishers, so for a while there, so I did some self-publishing with novels on Amazon, and back in, I'd say 2009 maybe through 2012, it was just this huge thing, and I don't think it is what it used to be. Some people have found a lot of success there, but during that time, you had these authors that came out and just hit it out of the park. They were making literal millions of dollars selling 99-cent ebooks on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would get picked up by publishers, because to a publisher, the risk is not there anymore. They already know that their products can sell. They know that they usually have a blog or something. Back then it was blogs that everyone was using as a platform to sell from. And so it made it for them a no-brain, business decision. So with crowdfunding, I wish that there was more of that. I think there will be more. I think one of the few that I can think of that has sort of leveraged it into getting published, like published with Alterna. Though even with that, it was he accepted the submission before I think the Indiegogo campaign really solidified it. I don't know, but regardless, it was still that I was trying to develop an audience. People were interested in the book, and and it did well. And I've got readership now that I wouldn't otherwise through like a traditional method of going to a publisher and getting those rejection letters over and over again. You sort of prove yourself first, and then it's up to publishers to decide, how they're going to approach you and what kind of deal makes sense for both of you.
It makes sense. So I hope I have in my audience, for whatever it's worth, there's a lot of kind of indie creators out there. So I know that they're interested in your story. I think we want to get back to that, but a couple of questions real quick before it gets too far down. I have a horrible habit of not getting to the questions, and I'm scrolling up 800 times. It is Larry asked real quick, just on the book itself, is it a one shot or part one of, or is this a universe you're looking to expand? Where does F.A.T.L go from here?
So it can be a big story. This is the nice thing about crowdfunding is we kind of want to wait and see how it does in the funding process before we fully commit. I would love to make this thing an ongoing series, but the way that the story is written is it would be definitely serialized. It would be more episodic. And so going to this single planet, this is sort of the story of them going to that planet. Should we want to expand it, it would be like, okay, here's the next planet and the next adventure. And I was kind of inspired a bit by Hellboy in that
Oh yeah.
they managed to do that so well. You know, like this is the case, and you have a complete story arc, and it has a resolution. But obviously, there's more to tell in that universe. So I hope that answers the question. But for now, the plan is just this book at the moment.
Well, it's good to get your feet under you with one project and then expand, of course, based on interest. And a lot of creators, I mean, including I know that's Sean Gordon Murphy's plan for Plot Holes. There's a bunch of books that are kind of in the same vein of like do one, expand based on interest. So,
Yep.
This question is: if a comic ever becomes available as a graphic novel, I'll be happy to buy it if it ever comes out. I think your crowdfunded book is there. There's for lack of a better word, it is kind of a graphic novel format in its original format.
Yeah, so it'll have a spine. It's not a floppy. It'll, you know, we're talking 52 pages right now. A story will have some extras in there as well. But yeah, so if you mean like a collected, like if we do a long running series and make some kind of a collected, larger book or omnibus or something like that. Right now it's just so uncertain.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's not a floppy. I've polled my readers because I always used to think like I love floppies, but I love graphic novels and I love them for different reasons. And I just went ahead and asked the question, and far and wide most people just wanted a spine so they could put it on the bookshelf. So I said, okay, all right, well, that solves my problem. So that's the way I'm putting out all my books.
Well, I mean, excellent. And I think follow-up question, same person, just wanting to support indie creators. Do you think, and maybe I'm reading between the lines of this question a little bit, but, you know, by and large, because I do track this, if you look at a lot of the people who are doing crowdfunded books, more have delivered than not by a pretty big margin. I think it's probably about, I would guess, rule of thumb, 80 to 85% have delivered, and within a reasonable time frame. And then some people are late. That's a different story, but generally within a reasonable time frame, most have. But it feels like there's been some high-profile misses. I think, including like even Rob Liefeld, others, and Joe Mad is another one. I think some big names. How much do you have to overcome that? Do you feel like you have to overcome that feeling of that lack of confidence?
That's a big deal. It's a big deal when it's your first book you're putting out, especially. And when I tell people like the big thing with crowdfunding is you have to get people to trust you, that you're going to take their money and spend it appropriately and make their book and give them a quality product and get it shipped to them. So for me, that's a big deal. And it kind of just started with you slowly build up your audience. You got to talk to people. But now that I mean, this is my third crowdfunding campaign. And after having done the first two, I'm pretty comfortable with the confidence level that I have from my readers. They know I'm, going to deliver my book when I say I am, or pretty close to it. But I still get, again, it's for the people that are not familiar with me, or not familiar with crowdfunding. Maybe they haven't done it. They're still hearing about those big cases where you got some big name creator that's made a ton of money and they've never shipped out a book and it's been years. So that's tough. But for me, it's almost to my advantage. That's my competitive advantage, is that I don't have a huge name, but I'm professional. I'll get your book to you. You know what I mean? I'll get it finished and get it done. So to me, there's some, it's actually can be helpful.
It's frustrating to me at times where I wish that more of the comic news media, and that's a oxymoron in and of itself, but where some of these bigger names who have failed on the books, there's almost a forgiveness aspect to them where they'll continue to hype and promote other projects and what they're saying on Twitter and other things. And I almost wish some of the bigger names that have not delivered, it's been like 5 years and nothing has come out. I'd like those messages. I'd like that promoted even more in many ways, of saying, hey, these people are not delivering. Here's a bunch of people who are, because it never feels like it really hurts the big names. It hurts all the smaller guys, though. They just have more to overcome. It's a anyway.
I've heard people say it's a scam. You know, I've always heard it's a scam. I've backed dozens of Indiegogo campaigns. I've gotten most of the books, and the ones I haven't got, I'm still not that worried yet. I mean, some are pretty late, but you know, we'll see. But yeah, there's some that are like, I've heard of like 7 years late, 5 years late, 7 years late. I do wish, just like you're saying, there was almost like a watchdog site or something. You could put up a list of creators that took the money and ran, essentially.
Yeah, I think it would maybe give some people some more confidence. Can we get a hardcover? Are you planning a hardcover format for this?
I'd really have to look into that. For this campaign, we're not doing a hardcover. Few reasons. One is I know it drastically changes the shipping, and I just finished shipping out a campaign, and going from like £2 to £3 is a huge difference, especially shipping internationally. So I'm kind of avoiding the hardcover right now. If I did a hardcover, I think I would need to probably do a separate campaign for it. I would certainly have to make shipping work. I don't want to just lose money and give out books. So hardcovers are tough, but down the road, I'm totally open to doing it. But for this being the first time, we have to fund the art itself. Yeah. We're just going to go with a trade paperback format.
And is it standard trim size? Sorry for all the chat's gotten all technical. They're interested in buying. So that's
we got to talk about printing. Yeah.
How about a Downcast 1 and 2 Fatal Perk?
So I have Downcast available in the in-demand store for Downcast. So that's where you'd get it. Where it gets mixed up is I've got different creative teams for both books. And so what I'm trying to do is really keep money separate. You know, every time someone backs Downcast, I've got to deal with the artist. It's not my money, it's our money. And so he gets a cut of that. So I want to make sure that doesn't, get mixed in with the sales for F.A.T.L. So to me, the easiest way to do it is just to keep the campaign separate.
Yeah, that makes sense. And here's a more, okay, somebody purchases the Get Drawn Into the Book level. Can they get a print of the page they're featured in?
I heard someone bring this up. I think that's a fantastic idea. So I can make that official on the campaign, and print one out and make sure you get it as well. But yeah, I'm gonna say yes right now for sure. I'll just put it on the campaign so there won't be a question of it. But I think that's a great idea.
Very, very nice. Okay.
This comes up all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go with no. What do you think?
So I did a whole stream on the people ask the question a lot, and I've got access to a lot of genealogy records, and I can tell you that I actually am related to Bram Stoker, but it's not through my father's. It's not through my Stoker lineage. It's through my mom's side. So I did a whole stream on this. I've got receipts. I can prove it, but it's very ridiculous. It's like he's my 11th cousin 4 times from. It's pretty distant, but because of this, people ask about it all the time, and they want me to do a Dracula book. So I have one in the works. So I'm going to do a Dracula book. It'll be a little bit of a gimmick, and I'll dedicate it to my 11th cousin. 14 times removed, whatever it is. It'll be a little bit of a joke, but I am related. It's just very, very distant.
Oh, very nice. I'm just related to the premier of China, so that's what they tell me.
That's true.
Hey, what advice do you have for people for trying to get your feet on the ground in comics? So a lot of people, this comes up a lot. I did the interview with Narwhal as well. You've got a part-time job. You want to become full-time. And actually, I have another interview. I've got to process it. It'll take a couple more days before it goes up. I think you guys are going to like it. It's from a writer-editor, completely from the opposite end of the spectrum, I would think, from everyone else. So please be kind in the comments. You guys should. There's good things to learn here. But he made the comment that in order to get full-time into comics, it's like an average of 10 years to really get to be in that place. Do you think that's true? Is it that, like, how long before you can be full-time in comics? Assuming you're working at it constantly.
I don't know. I still don't know the answer to that question. With which, you know, respectfully, I think about this all the time. I'll tell you, I think that it's probably faster if you have a plan and you're trying to sort of level up every time. And so part of that is getting connected with the right people, figuring out if you can get something published, figuring out if you can do crowdfunding, building your audience. Like there's things you can do to sort of advance yourself. I'm not full time yet. I really, really want to be full time, but on one hand, it could be a matter of hitting the right numbers on a crowdfunding campaign, you know, where I can take enough profit off of it to figure, okay, if I do, you know, 3 of these a year, I should be full time. So on paper, I see a pathway that it could work. In reality, I think it's still going to take me some time. The other thing too, I'm noticing is the more books that you have out, the more that sort of stabilizes some income. So even right now with sorry, I saw one of the comments and it was really distracting. Right now with F.A.T.L going, sorry, excuse me. I still am selling Downcast books. And so I've got those right here, you know, they're in my closet over here. And so being able to send those out means I'm still making money. And so the more back catalog of books I have, that means I'm able to sort of sustain some kind of income. So I do see it snowballing. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, that's good. You know, it's helpful, and I think and just to respond to Ben, just to put the interview in context, it's not like the guy was saying it's going to take you 10 years. His comment was, on average, as you're looking at people, it seems to take about 10 years. And his comment also was that there's a number of things you can do to speed that process up, slow that process down. But a lot of people have this, and why it was related to the previous question, they have this misconception if they just show up to the table in 12 months, they can have their Marvel contract and they can be writing Ghost Rider, or they could be writing Thor, they could be Donny Cates if they just, you know, give the right drinks to the right people and make the right friends. And so a lot of people kind of hit the wall very, very early because they're not prepared to go 10 years. So I just want to put that in context. I think it was a wise thing. It fits with what you're saying as well. You have to put in the work.
Yeah. And that's the other part of it too, is I think there's a huge correlation between what you are giving up to spend time doing comics. And for a long time there, it was like no more TV. And like I just sat down and realized I'm going to be building a YouTube audience and I'm going to be making comics and I have a full-time job. And I've got 3 kids, you know? And so I've got to give something up to have time to do this. And so it was like, I'm not watching TV anymore. I'm not playing video games anymore. And I think you got to figure out what works with you. But I think the moment it's kind of liberating when you sit back and you realize, okay, I can spend my evenings doing, you know, these efforts related to building my comics career, and let go of these entertainment factors, and I'll be fine. And it is really kind of liberating to just be like, oh, it's not really that important to me. You know, these other things I fill my time with. And so I do think that does help, that speeds things up. But yeah, I mean, I'm still in the process, so it'll be interesting to see. I've been at this for 2 years. This month, 2 years ago, I started my YouTube channel, and really, well, even before that though, too, because I was submitting things to submissions to Image Comics and trying to get into anthologies and things like that, and it was rough. I've just kind of changed direction 2 years ago, and it feels like now I'm really making progress. So we'll find out how long it takes.
I mean, your project has crossed the $40,000 mark. And so are you feeling, I mean, you've exceeded your goal by quite a margin. Are you feeling successful about it? And you have the Alterna.
Yes. Yeah. So pretty good. Right. It feels great. The big thing to me is I'm not so much like the driving goal isn't, can I do this full time? It is, can I keep making comics?
Right.
And so I took a bit of a profit. I bought an arcade machine back here. You know, I bought that with some of my Downcast money after I got everybody taking care of everything shipped. And I have enough money to fund more of this Dracula book we're talking about before we get to the crowdfunding campaign. So to me, that's really successful. And if I can keep doing that and keep growing, someday I'll have enough of a name and people will genuinely just be interested in what I'm writing, and they want to see what comes out next, that hopefully it'll be more in the realm of possibility to just launch a crowdfunding campaign or get a great publishing deal and be able to do it full time. So I just think if I keep continuing down this road and I'm progressing and making more books and improving, to me there's no doubt that eventually I'll get there.
Well, congratulations on the success so far. Again, a lot of people in the chat cheering you on. It's been great to see things rise. If you don't mind, and feel free to tell me no, or this may be some proprietary information, but
sure.
There's two questions I get a lot, and I get a lot of different answers. Well, first is, how big do you need a YouTube channel to get before that really becomes a driver for promotion? Is it that you have to build up an audience and get 1,000 subscribers, or what kind of, or do you even measure it that way?
Yeah, it's a little, my YouTube channel is not super big. I've got a little over 5,000 subscribers. And so by all metrics, I would say it's not big enough. Subscribers don't really matter all that much. It has a lot more to do with views and how much people are interacting and they're interested with your stuff. So what I would suggest for every single person to do is build a mailing list, and that'll help you sort of judge, if they're willing to not only watch your video, but sign up for a mailing list, showing that they have some intention of backing your books, reading your books when you put them out. That'll help you gauge how many people are interested. So this is just my own opinion, but I think minimum you should have 400 email subscribers, which it can seem like a lot, but it's not really. It's not really very many. If you have 400, I think you can make a successful crowdfunding campaign, but you're probably not going to get paid. You're going to make a book. And if you think about it that way, that this is a stepping stone, you're going to make a book, you're going to get yourself published, then, that's step one. That's a success. You should be proud of that. The more beyond that, now my mailing list is a little over 1,000, and nice. It's been really good. So now I can launch crowdfunding campaigns with a little bit more confidence. If I had 10,000, then I could probably quit my job. You know what I mean? Like I'd have that much more confidence that my crowdfunding campaigns are going to do that much better. So it's more of the idea is to be very scrappy, be very lean, be really nice to people, comment back in the comment section. Every single one of those people is an individual that could be reading your books. So if you treat them like that, you can actually do a lot with relatively small following.
I'm glad to hear you talk metrics, because it feeds into the second question I had, and this is where I'm hoping you can provide some credibility. So I always give this answer, but it's like, I haven't started my campaign or anything like that, so they don't believe me. So we'll see what you say. I'm astounded by the amount of people who want to get into comics, and they basically say, "Hey, I'm taking home about $80,000 a year. That's my job. I make $80,000 in my normal life. So I'm hoping to, I'll take a slight haircut. So I'm hoping to make at least $75,000 on my crowdfunding campaign in a year, so I can not work in my job." And my comment is always, pardon expression, dummy, that's not all profit. You don't just get that money and then go home with it. You have to pay out money.
Yeah.
Why do people not understand that?
I don't know, but I run into the same thing over and over again. I think the main thing is you should email, if you want to make a book, figure out how long it's going to be in the print quality you want. Email a printer and ask them for a quote. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it cost me about $8,000 to do this last print run. Mm-hmm. It cost me an additional $7,000 just to ship it, ship the books to people. And I'm still dealing with damaged books, lost in the mail books that I have to ship out. Is really expensive. I haven't even got to paying the artist. That, depending on your artist, that can vary. You can, your letterer, your colorist, There's a lot of expenses that come up. Are you going to pay somebody to do a variant cover? That can get pricey too. And so honestly, if you're making $20,000 on a campaign, congratulations. You're going to be able to put out a book. I think you can put out a nice book. You're not going to make any money from it. And that's reality. When you're making even 30,000, you're going to have a little bit, but it can feel negligible because you're shipping to more people. But beyond that, then you start to get, what do they call it? The more people that it's sort of exponential. There's a word for it. I'm just drawing a blank.
It's the hockey stick of exponential growth of sales.
Yeah. And so you will have the opposite of diminishing returns. So it gets cheaper to print per book. Shipping, you're still shipping out to each and every person, but you start to see more profit because your expenses go down.
Yep.
So that's where it gets a little bit better. But if you're making $75,000, I would say plan on, probably depending on your project, but 30 grand of that is going to go to producing your book and fulfilling your book. You're not going to see a cent of that. So Can you live off what's left there? I don't know. I can't.
Where you live, but it's and I think that's an area where people get themselves into trouble, and as well, it's a live to your means. If you can't make 20,000 on a book, if you think you're going to make 5,000 on a book, I've done interviews with a lot of other creators and people. They know they can't make that up front. They use webcomics. They publish themselves using a much cheaper method. There's tons of ways to do it, and it seems like it's not a bad idea to get content out there, to start building up your library. You don't have to immediately try and replicate what Marvel does with a trade paperback up front. Live within your means and then go with it. Yeah, Jason Goldberg, the economy of scale.
Thank you. That's the correct term.
I was going for the high profits, but yes, economy of scale. Here's and I apologize. I want to get some other things, but people are really interested in your project, of course. So here's somebody who's got a bunch of scripts, storyboards drawn. How do you find an artist? What's the best way to go about it? Do you join the right Facebook group and make fun of some other people, and then an artist automatically just joins your project because they that's how it works? Or is there? I'm kidding, but how do you do it?
Yeah. So I think there's two questions in there, and one is how do you get an artist, which is a big question. The second one is how do you get an artist like Charlie Snogans?
Right.
And that is not the same thing at all. Getting an artist, if you have money, you can get an artist. And it takes, again, so I'm pretty into Magic the Gathering. It's been a hobby I had. To get Downcast 1 going, I sold a bunch of my more expensive cards. I set aside some money. I have a little window cleaning business. I earned a little bit extra money, set it aside, and that's how I hired Ignacio Lazaro that did Downcast. So that's one route to go, and you just want to make sure you find somebody that is not going to take your money and run. Somebody that can get pages done and send them back to you. Pick a length of book that you can handle, and you might even just decide that you want to do a little 8-page thing just to make sure you know how the process works first. I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
Like a little size book.
Yeah. To get someone like Charlie Snogans, I'm very, very fortunate. I can't overstate that. I'm extremely fortunate to have Charlie Snogans working with me. But how that happened is I had a book. I made Downcast. I sold it. I pitched it. He saw me pitch it on YouTube. He thought it sounded great. He thought I did a good job pitching it. He backed the book. He read the book and he loved it. So from there, it was that he needed a writer. He wanted to do a comic, been wanting to do one for years. And it was sort of right place, right time, right people. And so that's again why, hitting a home run your first time is not crucial to continue your comics career. It's getting stuff out there and published actually opens up more opportunities for you. And I'm exactly my case right now. And I still get people asking like, why, I'm the ugly one in the relationship. I'll totally admit that. But it's one of those things that, I worked hard, got my book finished so that people can read it. And that opened so many doors. So I'd say you got to start somewhere, find an artist, just get money together to be able to pay an artist, and that is going to help you reach the next step.
Well, and it segues. We'll come back. There's still some questions on your book, but I'd like to take you to another place if you don't mind, or we can just chat about comics in general. I'm going to pour myself another whiskey sour here, which would be nice. Less of the sour, more of the whiskey, which would be good. But I'm thinking about, so right now with the comic industry contracting to some extent, or at least things are shuffling out. We know we can predict pretty reasonably in the next 12 months, there's probably going to be fewer books out than there are today. That's inevitable. That means in turn that there's going to be fewer creators, there's going to be writers, there's going to be artists, there's going to be people who are looking for work, looking for projects. I think that's a reasonable assumption too. Now, this happened in the 90s, and a lot of those people kind of just shook out of the industry. A lot of relatively big names that just aren't around anymore. And I'm going to cover some of those people. It's kind of surprising when you start to tally it up. But connected to what you just said, if you're an indie creator right now, you have an idea for a comic book, you're a writer, you have a pitch, whatever it happens to be, what do you think is going to happen with talent that's now suddenly potentially available, potentially willing to work at a cheaper page rate? Not that you want to drive everyone down, but is there a model where people can, and I mean this in a nice way, take advantage of this situation to potentially find some people for their projects that may not have been interested a year ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. If you're like me, I'm not coming in as a comic book veteran that has a big name. I'm building this from the ground up, and so what can I bring to the table is I can put in the effort to learn how to market a book, and if I guarantee you'll find the one major thing why comic book pros aren't crowdfunding their own books is because marketing. It's the same reason why people go to publishers. And I'm even talking about traditional book publishers instead of launching a book or self-publishing something or selling it on Amazon. You're just sending out letters and getting rejection notices because that publisher knows how to market your book.
Right.
If you can accept that responsibility and take it on, then you're all of a sudden going to be much more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And that is 100% the case with me. Now it's a lot easier to find artists because I've just proven at least that I can market at least a little bit, and I can make a profit off of a book, which is more than I think a lot of people can say, more than I could have said 2 years ago for certain. So that is valued by comic book professionals, is if you can sell a book, you're suddenly going to look like a much more attractive partner.
Do you have to get into anything where
you kind of roboted out there a little bit? I don't know if it's me or you.
Oh, it's probably me. It's the afternoon and everybody's deciding to get onto Netflix. So I apologize if there's a drop to the feed. If by the way, if the disaster happens and Clint's all by himself, I'll be right back. We'll see what happens, but hopefully not. No, my question was just how do you deal with rights? So you're getting these creators, you're creating some original IP. Do you share rights with your artist? Does it work for hire? How attractive is that? And no, I'm not in the car.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah. So I think you can do it a lot of different ways. Currently, like Downcast, I share IP with Nacho. I didn't need to make that deal for some reason at the first, it was my first book and I wanted an artist that was just really committed to the project. And so I paid him his page rate. Plus I said, you get a piece of this IP. And then I had raised his page rate too. And so, which was great. And I don't regret doing that, but you can, I don't know, if you're in it to make something that you own yourself, I think there's nothing wrong with that. And it's I'm sure I'll do that, in the future. But I don't know, there can be definitely some incentive for the right artist if they are sharing some of that IP. And that can be very attractive too, especially for artists that are probably better than you could just pay for outright, if they're going to, take part in the profits and the IP and they're willing to take that risk with you.
Excellent. Excellent. So I know that we need to get some other things, of course, but it's when we get a creator like yourself on who has delivered things, has done things. I always like to pick the brain. I mean, there's just so much that people can learn, and hopefully also on the replay, I think there's a lot here. Kind of moving to some other comics. So Paul asked, what comics did you read back in the day? What got you going? And along that, what are you reading today?
Yeah. So I started reading comics in my early 20s. I didn't, I read a couple comics when I was younger, some Ninja Turtle comics. I'm a huge Turtles fan. But I really started having more interest in it when I was a young adult. And so I started reading Stan Lee's Spider-Man, and that was just fun. And then from there, it was more of looking into my favorite characters. That's kind of how I went about it. So I've got a bunch of random runs from Batman that I enjoyed, that kind of got me going. I've been a lot more interested in indie comics lately. Right now I am reading through all of Hellboy and like the BPRD, and so I just started the BPRD, and I've been loving that a lot. Beyond that, it's I am always looking at what's happening in crowdfunding too. So I have a big stack of books that I need to get to. But lately, like the thing I've just been craving Hellboy. I just love that story. It's so fun.
There's a lot there, and I mean,
Yeah.
it creates quite a mythology. So you're not following Iron Man 2020 closely then?
No, I'm so out of it when it comes to like Marvel and DC books. Like I'm aware of what's happening, but I haven't really had that much interest in reading it. And it's not like it's been years that I've just, my interest has waned. And so I'll think of, if I want to read Batman, I kind of want to go back and read The Long Halloween again, or some of the other stuff that I've really enjoyed, but I don't know why it just hasn't been super interesting to me.
Well, it drives you to drink. At least that. It's not that there were some good comics this week. I think that the Daredevil annual was actually very solid. Did some new things. It felt like a bit of a kind of fu in some ways to Joe Quesada, but maybe I'm just reading into it. But still, it was fun. I like Three Jokers. I thought that was great. So there were some good mainstream titles out there, and there's some great indie titles out there as well. There's always some good things out there, but they definitely are. Well, Iron Man 2020 tests your faith in the universe for sure.
No. Yeah, I've heard that like Daredevil was good, and so that's one that I've been mildly interested in. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it drives me to drink more, to answer the question in the chat. More than is reasonable, or you just want to forget everything you did. If they offered you one title, the big two. Well, actually, I want to ask this question, but then there's another one. So, one, if they offered you one title, who are you going to do?
It's believe it or not, it's not really on my like list career goals to write one. If I did though, it would almost be, I think I have an idea for like a Daredevil thing I could do, but what I would love more is to take some super obscure character from the past that has been forgotten, and write something there. It kind of stresses me out to think about writing something that has to work with all of the history. You know what I mean? So
it's not easy.
yeah, and then there's also, like, I've heard the point, which is a great point, in that what else do you do? If I'm being honest, like, I love Batman. I don't think I have anything very original to bring to Batman. If I had to and I was thinking of it, I'm sure I could come up with something, but yeah, I think I would rather go for a really obscure character.
Yeah.
So I know that's a bad answer.
No, it makes it, but it goes to the second part. It wasn't in this question, but it's how much, and this may be kind of a sucker bet a little bit, just given that you're already, I already think I already know the answer, but how much is writing for the big two even a goal anymore? And I say it this way: in the 80s, and I started my comic shop in the early 90s, that was the goal. It's like one day I'll be part of the big two, and then I'll have made it.
Yeah.
Today, is that still a goal?
You know what's weird is that when you listen to pros that work for the big two, and they talk about their future goals, they're talking about making their own stories and making their own IP.
Yeah.
So that says something to me. Not only that, but like I mentioned earlier, my dream was to have something published through Image and have a creator-owned book, So for me, I just have so many ideas and so many books I want to do. I would rather, what I'd love, my dream would be to build some kind of ongoing series, big, nice, epic that had lots of readers, and I could just go back to and continue to add to, and that to me is the dream. That's what I really want.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that dream. I people haven't asked this in the chat, but when I announced that you're going to come on, which again, thank you very much for joining us today. We got a nice audience. Apparently, nobody, YouTube is not promoting this, or I don't know what's going on. It's always feels like it's a shot in the dark, or I'm just doing so many videos, I've crushed them. That's also possible.
Yeah,
one of those two. So somebody asked, so how important is it? And this is an interesting question. How important is it to quote unquote pledge, if you will? That's not the right word, but to be with one group or another. Right now we hear about two groups in a lot of the crowdfunding. There's Comicsgate, and then there's whatever the opposite of Comicsgate is, which really needs a better name than like anti-Comicsgate. There needs to be some branding over there for that club.
Yeah, there's some polarization.
Yeah, it doesn't fit on a t-shirt well. So how do you have to go one direction or the other to be successful in comics? And how important?
So it's kind of a weird way to frame it, and I get it, and I think most people frame it that way. When I got into and interested in Comicsgate, it wasn't like it was oh, hey, I need to join this group so I can make my comic. It was just that I saw what was going on, and then I saw people that were like-minded on, and the more I learn about things, I'm also I differ in a lot of ways as well with my opinions, and that's okay. But it was more just I had these set of opinions, and therefore that made me Comicsgate. You know what I mean? Because everything is just so polarizing. But I do see for certain, like I'll see people post on Twitter, like just a reminder that Comicsgate is a hate group or whatever, like these kind of announcements. And I think that's again like a way to sort of pronounce that I'm on this side, you know what I mean? So therefore hoping that it'll help your publishing career or something. But honestly, I would not think about it. I wouldn't think about it that way. If you want to make comics and that's your goal, then make comics. Crowdfunding is still crowdfunding. If you want to associate with like-minded people, and those like-minded people are Comicsgate, or they're whatever we're going to call the other side, then do it. I don't know. I don't think that it's should be really a factor into if you're going to make comics or not. And I've seen some people do it, and it seems like a mistake to me. Like, I'm joining Comicsgate and then try to sell a comic, and then it doesn't do very well, and then they're upset. So then they leave Comicsgate, and I just think that's a backward way to think about it. You make comics, you interact with people, you network. If you feel good about being part of the team, that's really fun. That can be really fun. If you don't, then don't. I think I don't think it should be a huge factor in making comics.
I'd hope not. I think it shouldn't. I think at various times people say the others. I think this comment from Critical Blast, great channel, by the way. They have some great videos out there. You should check those out. Good interviews. Please go over there and subscribe and everything else. But it is the problem I see with all this is people try and boil it down to two groups, but that's just a false premise to start with. There's a lot of different variety to these things, so much so that it's pointless, I think, to kind of label people A or B, because there's dozens of other letters in that alphabet. If you go online, and I've seen this happen to people, and say, I think comics are too expensive, there's a group of people who come in and go, well, you're Comicsgate then. It's like that shouldn't, a comment on price shouldn't infer anything about anything. It's just, it's too expensive. And so it just feels like it pigeonholes. I like what you said. You get creators who are coming in and they go one direction or another. And by the way, again, the interview I have coming up, the exact same story in reverse of somebody who kind of pledged the other side, didn't make a lot of money, and then suddenly they feel betrayed by that side, whereas the product itself wasn't necessarily good. So it does feel backwards. And I think, some good comments in the chat about you focus on producing a comic, you get it out, the rest kind of seems to take care of itself. Now, some people will try and drag you one direction or the other, but it just feels like a lot of noise to your project.
Yeah, yeah, for me personally, I have no problem. Like I have no problem with people calling me Comicsgate. I have no problem, like, yeah, sure, I'm Comicsgate. I'm not the type of person though that like demands it of other people, you know what I mean, or makes that a sticking point. And that goes. I see this in the industry as well, though. It's like, I don't know, where do you draw the line? So I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk to me. The thing is, it's more of I'm pretty vocal about my opinions. My channel is kind of political, and I talk about these kinds of things, and it's because it's what interests me. I'm genuine about that. But because of that, then I'm part of the group according to the other side. I'm part of the group according to this side. I have no problem with that at all. I quite like the people that I associate and stream with. Having said that, though, I'm perfectly happy to talk to anybody.
Yeah, as it should be. I think you should be open to talk to anybody, and I think it goes for all the people listening too. Like I've warned about, I've got a video again coming up that I'm specifically going out and trying to talk to as many people in the industry as I can, and it's better when when they have very distinct opinions. I'll say here on the show, if Mags Visaggio wanted to come on an interview her, I would interview her. I want to hear that perspective, and we should be open to hearing that perspective. Way different than having an interview, hearing a perspective like that versus a group of people behind the scenes trying to do something shady. Those are two separate things, and it's better to get about. But it goes to his question that K-Manifesto says, and this is funny because this is a battle that I've seen play out, where the decision to use Kickstarter, Indiegogo in many cases is a business decision in a lot of cases. It's or what you feel most comfortable with, or where you think you're going to get the return. There's actual details in why you want to pick one over the other. And I know you're doing your stuff on Indiegogo. That's the answer that feels right to you, but it shouldn't be anything more than that, right? It's just a fit.
Yeah, I mean, that one gets complicated too. I think initially it's like, well, we can get into specifics, I guess, but like initially it's like Kickstarter. I've got problems with the way that Kickstarter runs things, politically, and they put political ideology into what campaigns are not allowed to be on, for example, and you could disagree with me, but I've got a problem with that. But I have a problem with Patreon and how they, and at some point it gets to be like, okay, you have to have some kind of tolerance for where what platforms you're going to use, you know what I mean, based off of moral reasons. And this works all around the world, do all sorts of things and issues. For me personally, I have no thoughts in ever using Kickstarter because I know that my audience prefers Indiegogo, and I've already backed. Now this is the third book on Indiegogo, so I've heard people say before, like, make the change. It's my crowd won't go there. You know what I mean? So it just doesn't make sense.
So it's a business decision, in other words. It's where you're going to make money.
Yeah, it's a business decision. I like the platform better too.
Yeah. And some do. I know there's some people on Kickstarter who like that environment, like that platform, likes what it gives you. I've heard stories about how you're paid out that's very different from one to the other. But it shouldn't be that if you pledge one camp, you can't use the other. That to me seems absurd. It should be what fits you best as a creator and what fits your audience, so you're making money.
Yeah, and a lot of that gets sort of built up. I think most people I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but I would imagine that like most people that are on the Comicsgate side of things don't really care if a creator is using Kickstarter. Like I haven't seen like masses of people. I've sometimes will promote somebody that has a book that's on Kickstarter, and sometimes I'll have someone in the comment section that says, "Oh, it's on Kickstarter. I don't want to support it." But other than that, I don't see people that are like, mobbing or trying to cancel them because they decided to go to Kickstarter. But there's definitely, I see the fear and sort of the polarization that has kind of happened in the comics world, in that it's saying something about you as a person depending on which platform you use.
Yeah.
And there's not a third platform. You know what I mean? Like it's always, it's just this decision you're going to make, and it's going to be so public, and it just is an insight into your soul.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. I don't know how to, I don't know. I try to be nice to people, I guess.
At the end of the day, you build your audience, you be nice to the people who are paying you the money, and that has to just be enough. I mean, it's weird that we've gotten to this spot, and I think equally weird is simultaneously the industry is having some troubles. It's contracting in areas. In most kind of reasonable businesses, this is the time that people have bond together. You put aside all the grievances you can, because it's important to survive the next several months. And we're at a time now where that is just not an option for people. They're going to continue to run it into the ground. And like you say, I think I hear a lot less from the Kickstarter is problematic. There's some people in chat are noticing, there's some people there they may disagree with politically, or there's reasons why they don't want to support it. That's fine. I think if you're on Patreon, I think you definitely have to ask some questions. If you're building up an audience, are they going to pull the rug out from under you one day? And again, thinking like a businessman, you have to take that into consideration. But the other direction, I do notice I've seen a lot of people completely independent, not pledged to anything, don't go on any streams. They're just doing a comic. They choose Indiegogo, and it's like the torches come out for you pick that platform, we're after you. And that seems really broken.
Yeah. And I'm biased because I'm on the Comicsgate side of things, but when I look at it, that's exactly what I see far too often. Sean Gordon Murphy went out on Indiegogo, and that was a big statement. And then suddenly it was people looking into little things that he did,
Absolutely.
And it's just like, can it just be a smart place to put your comic, or a decision? You know what I mean? It's impossible to really know how that would have affected his campaign one way or the other, but everything ends up being a political statement, and you can, the only way to opt out is just to not participate, and then you're not doing a crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
I don't know. I wish we could move past it. I think the people at Indiegogo have been very neutral, it seems. I think that they don't agree with my politics. Just based off stuff that they have in their their, I can't even think of what it's called, their mission and vision and values and stuff like that. I think that we probably disagree on our politics, but they've never given me any trouble with my campaigns, so I'm happy with that. That's all I don't want somebody to agree with me 100% in order for me to do business with them. I want them to just not care.
At the end of the day, money should talk. And you're right. The Indiegogo board and some of the people who are investing in it are definitely stated left-leaning. But at the same time, that platform seems to just prioritize money. And you mentioned Murphy. When I did the interview with him, I think he mentioned, Indiegogo just had one or two aspects that just better fit what he was trying to do. So that's what he picked, which is the rational choice. But anyway, sorry for getting onto politics there. Just it's weird to me how this seems like an area where it just doesn't need to apply. Yet here we are. So back to comics. So favorite run on a comic. What's a favorite? Jumping the tracks here. What's a favorite run on a comic for you?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard question. Shoot. I love the Ninja Turtle comics, even when they're bad. I still love them. I want to always love them. Gosh, with Batman, I think Scott Snyder did some really good stuff, especially with the Court of Owls. That was up there. I think that's up there with one of my favorites. I love J. Michael Straczynski. I'm going to say his name wrong. His run on Spider-Man, ignoring the very end there, we'll forget that happened. But all throughout, it was just such high stakes. I thought he's such a good writer, and it's too bad, too bad how it ended. And then he said like he's never right. He didn't really go back to comics after that. He was done, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I loved that run.
How about, and this is very much related, so maybe it's the same question, all-time favorite comic, the one, your go-to, the one that's in your mind, you close your eyes, you think about the favorite comic you ever read. What comic is that?
That's going to change all the time. Right now, I'm so into Hellboy right now, and I think Mike Mignola is a genius. So I'm pretty into Hellboy. I love Ninja Turtles because it got me really thinking about what comics can be, indie comics, what you can do, in a very scrappy way. So I love that. Batman the Long Halloween, I love that story. That's probably my most read one. I'll go back and reread it again and again. I just love it.
Do you think, and this question goes out to the chat, and you mentioned earlier you're not following a lot of kind of current comics, but so maybe I'll throw this out there and we'll see if we get some responses. We can come back to it in a few minutes. But are there any comics being made now, not just by the big two, but any of the indies, that are going to be the classics we talk about in 15, 20 years?
That's a good question. I genuinely, there are a few out there. So an indie book that I want it to be a classic, I want more people to read it, is Six Gun Gorilla. That book, I did not expect it to be as good as it was. It is great. And that's a, Indiegogo campaign. I say it as much as I can because I was just knocked off my feet with how well written it was. It was just a great book. So that's one. I think that Cyberfrog is going to make an impact. I think he's doing something that is really interesting in comics. I think that he's built up a big enough fan base that it I don't know. I think it has some staying power. Gosh, the other thing is I just think that there have been a lot of really great small indie titles that have come out like through Image. I've been really impressed with. I don't know, a few years ago, I guess. So a bunch I've been impressed with, but I don't know. It's so hard to say.
What do you think of the current Ninja Turtle run that's going on right now?
Yeah, so I read it with the trade, so I'm a little bit behind. The problems that I have is that sometimes it gets so wordy that it kind of can suck the fun out of it, and that's been kind of one of my reoccurring complaints about it, is that sometimes it's just so good and then it'll end up being so wordy and you're reading through the whole thing just for this little bit of action at the end of a trade. And that's frustrating.
They get the Bendis disease and it ruins everything.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm actually happy that Tom Waltz is stopping the writing, but I haven't. Again, I'm behind, and I kind of reading it through the trade. So, those are my opinions. I look at it and I think I would love a shot at Ninja Turtles because I think I could do better.
Yeah, it feels like that's a property that needs some love at the moment. That is. There's more that could be done. It's a comic that has some timeless aspects to it, and there's certainly a lot more that could happen. But so a couple good chats. I've been putting them up on the screen as we go. Saga, the House of X Powers of 10, that initial run, Invincible. That was a great superhero comic. Invincible had a really, really nice run. Seemed like it ended correctly. It had kind of done what it needed to do, and they'd rather than keep it going. The Wonder Woman Dead Earth is an interesting. So that's an interesting one because I don't know. Have you read that book?
I haven't read it. I know what you're talking about though. I've seen the book.
It's a good comic. It's frustrating a bit because it feels like DC has not promoted what's a really nice comic on their hands. I mean, that had a unique story, some neat stuff going on in there, and it just I don't know. I've got a complaint really for the last few years with the big two, and that there's some nice comics being produced. You mentioned Daredevil earlier. I mean, Marvel is not promoting Daredevil anywhere close to other titles, and it feels like they're really leaving money. I mean, my biggest frustration, I know lots of people have lots of frustrations within the big publishers, the complete buffoonery. Now I sound very old. The marketing is just awful. I feel like what you've done. You certainly mentioned Cyberfrog earlier, but across the board, there's a lot of titles where the marketing from the independent guy is blowing away what the big two, who have the resources of AT&T and Disney. How can that possibly be?
Yeah, totally agree. That's been huge. I think it would make a massive difference if they were to make, like my Indiegogo campaign. I put together that little trailer. It didn't take all that long, but I really think it's effective in selling books. You know what I mean? Make a little video trailer every time you have a new creative team, or you're starting, whatever, you're going through a new story arc. Do something to promote the book. But it seems like they spend more time talking about the films or just about anything else other than the comics. That's a place where even just a little bit of effort, I feel like on their part, would make a huge difference. Because someone like me, you fall out of comics for a little while, out of like Marvel comics for a little while. Where am I going to start? Like, what interests me? I don't really know what's going on. Like, give me a taste of what the story is, what's behind it. I think that would help people want to jump on.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, it just feels like you're wasting money. You've lined up a team, you've got the editor, you got the writer, you've spent to have this comic produced. And even kind of bafflingly, I keep using this example, the J.J. Abrams and Son Spider-Man, which is not a great book at all. You got Sarah Kelly on there, and you do a huge amount of hype for the first issue. The hype died down kind of the second that first issue went to the shops, and then nothing. So issue 2, 3, 4, just zero marketing at all. You paid all this money, like, what are you doing? And I get why they produce videos for the movies. The movies are putting they're putting money and butts in seats, and it's helping fund things. But like cooking shows, like how to cook a ghostwriter cookie, like what is that selling? It makes
they're searching for content is what it feels like when it's like you have
yeah, you're producing so much content. Like, you could put CB Cebulski in a robe and put him in a chair with some food and just have him read comics to you on YouTube, and it would be better than what they're doing now. Maybe not with a robe. That gets kind of creepy, but you get the idea.
Yeah, and they could, I think if they were smart, if they didn't want to try and build something up like that themselves, could you imagine if they took like Comic Historian or Comics Explained or like some of these YouTube channels and just had a contract or something with them? Can you promote? We will pay you, and you're going to promote our weekly title. We're going to select titles every week that you're going to promote, and pay them, have it be a sponsorship kind of thing. But they get views. They're advertising these things. They've already figured out social media, and they will sell things. And I've looked at other industries too that do this. When there's a company there's a skateboard company, I think in Canada somewhere, but they've been very successful at getting social media influencers to be sponsors for their company, and they're selling their skateboards.
Yeah.
It's that easy. Like, somebody's already figured it out. Just plug in, make that connection.
It's it feels very, very strange for a company whose job it is to produce content to do such a poor job of then marketing the content they actually produce. It's I've never seen anything quite like this in any other industry. You have problems with TV and movies and games and other things, but on this one level, they seem to get it right. They at least know enough to market what they're actually making. Whereas with comics, it is all in advance, and what they actually ship to the stores, just they're content to let it die there. It's very, very strange.
Yeah, I don't I don't understand it.
Yeah. It's anyway, one of the great mysteries of things. It's a lot of good comics being put up here. I wanted to keep you for another 15 minutes, about 10, 15 more minutes if I could. So I did want to come back to your book and just make sure we've covered everything there. We've learned a lot about it. So for those who have joined the chat late, please go back. The replay will be up. The chat will be up. Everything else, you get a lot of really good content in the first half. Looking to the future, you put this book out. I apologize. I'm sure it's somewhere. When is this? What's the rough date that you're thinking this is going to ship? Fatal.
Yeah. Yeah, for Fatal. So the date for fulfillment is January, or did I put February? No, I've got to check it, but it's early next year, February. So February 2021 is my third book. So I got a pretty good track record on delivering books in a timely manner. So I expect that will at least be the case.
Nice. And then how quickly are you going to before you pivot to the next project?
I'm not sure. What I'm trying to do is I'm in production on a couple different things. I want to do another installment of Downcast. I've got to make sure the creative team's good to go. And then I've got that Dracula book that everyone keeps asking about. So I'm going to do it. And so I'm hoping to have Dracula finished and ready. I don't know about finished, but it's a significant amount of it finished before I launch. So it'd probably be March, I'm guessing, would be the next book launch.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. And that's launching the campaign, not the book in your hand, right?
Yeah, that'd be launching the campaign. Hopefully, and I'm going to get closer and closer with my timelines, but I want to get to the point where it's like I'm finished. I put in the financial investment. I'll launch it. It'll be up for a month, and then we close it, and I'll ship it out to you.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Very, very nice. Hey, this is a good question, and it's a new one. So we've had the pandemic. We've got COVID-19, and it's definitely done a number on shop retailers and everyone. Has this impacted you at all? With your supply chain or anything? How has it happened?
Yeah, it did hold up our printer. So this last book came out a couple of months later than I was hoping it would. We still ended up being just fine as far as the promises we made. But I thought, we're going to be really early with this book, getting it out. But what happened was that the printer had to they didn't stop, but they slowed down because they had to have fewer staff working at a time. And so it made it so they just had a backlog of print jobs. So mine got pushed back because of that. Besides that, it hasn't been an issue. I was a little worried about shipping out to backers, but that hasn't been an issue either. That's worked just fine, except for I know that at least the backers in Australia have to wait. I guess they quarantine packages for like 3 weeks or something like that. So yeah, so it'll take them some time to get their books. But other than that, it really hasn't been so bad. I expected it to be worse.
Yeah. I think kind of shifting gears real quick, and I've seen this question come up every time I talk to somebody who's creating comics here in the US. So there's always a curiosity. Do you read manga? Is that an influence on what you do? That's like a whole other world. Yeah. Does it cross paths with you or not?
So I watched my first anime, I think last year. Maybe it was 2 years ago. I kind of get things mixed up. I watched Death Note because my brother was like, you gotta watch, anime's great. And I just have never really had an interest because to me, anime was Pokemon, and the overreactions all the time, and it just seemed like it'd be obnoxious. But I watched Death Note twice. I watched the whole thing twice. It was so good. And so manga, I haven't delved into it, but I'm kind of interested in, I'm gonna say his name wrong. I think it's Jito. He does horror comics.
Yep.
that are interesting. So there's several of those that I've been really interested in reading. I want to pick some up. So if you have any suggestions of which ones are the best ones, let me know.
Yeah, I think definitely throw it in the chat if some people come in. There's a question I want to get to toward the end, but we'll get to. Yeah, this is who you're thinking of.
Junji Ito.
Ito-san. Definitely, there's a couple different Ito-sans though, so you gotta go the right way. There's a lot of great content out there for sure. I think in many ways, because I've lived in Japan and I've spent a lot of time in Japan, and definitely it's been a part of my life and the content there. There's a mechanism by which kind of manga artists, writers produce their comics that actually feels very similar to what's going on here in the West with crowdfunding and different kind of end result, but very similar kind of path to get there. And so there is a lot to learn. I think I'm hoping a lot of creators can learn things. Frankly, the big publishers can learn a lot from what's going on there. Doesn't mean that everything's perfect in that model by any stretch of the imagination, but there definitely is some things to learn there. Real quick, we'll hit this question. I'll hit something about comic shops. Besides purchasing a book by a creator, can you think of a way someone could invest? Like, how can somebody help you without buying the book? Is there a way?
That's a good question. I'm not there yet, but I don't know. I could think about if I was going to be expanding my publishing company. I've got I publish only my own books right now, Sweet Comics, but what I'd love to do is expand it and have books in the pipeline so that they're finished and ready to go. And then crowdfunding campaigns, I think, are nice. They're a good way to just solidify it, and you get out the door running. And so, I don't know. I'm not totally positive on it, but I could see maybe having investments or something like that in a book to be able to do more books at a time and get them out there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so far beyond me right now. I'm not there yet. So,
you mentioned the mailing list earlier. I mean, one of the things I've heard from other people, so I'm curious to help you as well, is just if you're interested in supporting a creator, just helping get the word out and driving people to those campaigns can actually be a pretty big help. I'm assuming that would be useful to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge thing. If you have a YouTube channel, I mean, everybody wants to, once I launch a campaign, they want to have me on their channel for an interview, which is great. But I get more requests than I can really accommodate. It gets a little tough. And so making videos, if you want to support a book, make a video about the campaign and tell your audience, posting it on social media, tell your, local comic shop or something about it. Like, just talking about it and spreading the word really helps. Writing blogs or articles. I wish that more of that happened. I've had a few people interview me for some articles online, but all that kind of stuff really helps because then people have something to search for. It's super helpful.
Awesome. I want to hit this, but this is a bigger topic, so I'll get kind of your view on it. And there's a chat going on around kind of comic shops in general. And again, this is a big topic. We're not going to tackle it here in the next 5 minutes or so, but here's a story. This gentleman is putting out kind of 3 or 4 comic shops came out against Zach. In this case, we're talking about Richard Meyer and I'm assuming job seekers. At least one was personally rude to him. Microcosm retailers as a whole. I'll give you my perspective, and I'm curious to hear yours. I think comic shops are, by and large, and I'm using some generalizations here, most don't care. They are, you got to understand, a lot of comic shops are still struggling to do their accounting on non-pen and paper. Like, literally, they're not on Twitter, they're not on Facebook. There's a struggle to just get digital, and they don't even know any of this stuff exists. That's kind of the most common norm. And then there's a few out there, but it is the minority that are very active online. And typically when they're very active online, they're trying to be very closely aligned with creators. And so there were some people, absolutely, I'm not denying that there were people who came out because we saw it. There are people who came out against this comic. My stance, and honestly, the majority of the Facebook retailer groups I was in was either A, I've never heard of this guy or this book, but if people want it, I will sell it. Or just, this is a bunch of noise, I don't care. And then you had like 1 or 2 people in the Facebook group who were really loud, who were going, no, this guy's a hateful person and all the rest. But those people tend to fly off the handle like every week at something they're pissed at. So they're I don't want to say ignored, but nobody cares anymore. I think that if you're an indie comic creator or doing crowdfunding and everything else, you should not turn your back on the comic shop because most comic shops want your content. They do. They want things to sell. And if you come to them with an audience and a market, they're happy to take money. They want money. Now, there are shops that are going to be against you or for whatever reason. And your answer is, don't go to those shops. I don't mean I mean in the simplest way possible. If somebody in your area is not willing to take your money without giving you a speech, then you should put your money somewhere else. This is my way of looking at it. What do you think? You've got some retailer options. You've been friendly to the local comic shop. What do you think of all this? And is it even an issue?
So this kind of thing is what prompted me to start making videos on the topic. I know how hard it is to try and get published through a publisher, and to have somebody to try and stop you from getting published. Like I really get that. I've gotten really emotional about that. And so, I think honestly, you don't need, if people want to hate you or they're not going to sell your book. They're not going to sell your book. So I don't know. There's enough people out there that don't care. And so I kind of just agree with you. I don't know as much about retailers. I know my local comic shop probably doesn't even know what's going on. They're one of those. But for the most part, I don't think most people care. I just think the ones that do are really loud about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and definitely, somebody's saying most of these people sound reasonable in real life. Not really. There's a handful of names that we see online, and I'll go to Comic Pro. We'll go to the retailer luncheons or breakfasts or things at cons, and those people who are insane online are insane in real life. And most of the other retailers look up at those people and they go, "Well, there's that asshole again," and that's just. It's not actually more complicated than that. I just want to push. There became this narrative of the comic shops are against us, and my answer is the vast majority of comic shops are not only not against you, they literally have no idea what is going on. And for those that are, they tend to be either boutique stores. Somebody mentioned one earlier that sells a lot of indie comics and back issues, and a couple of political comics, and that's it. Definitely there's a shop down in San Francisco by a guy who's really, really loud, but doesn't really carry any Marvel or DC. They carry what fits that market. And so if you're assuming that guy is going to be, reasonable, yeah, he's not, not at all. So anyway, there are loons everywhere. I guess that's the interesting. So there's been some other questions here, but we do need to kind of wrap it up. I wanted to, I've been posting at the bottom where they can get in touch with you on Twitter. I've got your Indiegogo here. Any kind of last comments, things to say? A lot of really good activity in the chat. Anything?
Yeah, just I appreciate you having me on to discuss. That's good. The nice thing is, like I said, I'm always want to get out and try to talk to people that are not inside my immediate circle. I love talking to people inside my immediate circle too. And so I appreciate you, because you're one of the people that came to mind that, you don't really seem to care about my moderate, what I think are moderate politics. And so I appreciate that. And it's also good to hear too from a knowledgeable retailer, which is, again, that's an area of knowledge I don't have, not my expertise. So I appreciate that. And everyone watching, appreciate you being here. And if you haven't backed F.A.T.L, at least go check it out, because the artwork, it really is something else.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like a great project. It's a lot of fun. I'm hoping you can come on again. We can talk more. Like I said, I like to talk to people, all different creators, all different types, and you bring a great perspective. And I just want to say thank you, and to people in the chat, thank you for all the great questions. I'm always really surprised, humbled when people show up. It passes 10 people watching, and I'm shocked and thankful. So it's always really good. Again, there's so many things in the chat here, but we are going to wrap it up. Clint, thank you very much. Best of luck with your campaign. Again, it looks amazing. So please, everybody, go check it out. And I hope everybody has a great Friday. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Clint's channel, not just, mine, great, but go subscribe to Clint's channel. Some great content in there. Very good. videos and content. So here's a good, who's hotter, Aunt May or Cyberfrog? What do you say? We're right here.
Oh man, that just feels. I feel like I'd have to go with Aunt May because of genetics would have to do that. But yeah, that's weird.
That's weird. Hey, thank you very much. Good night, everybody, and have yourselves a great weekend.
Thanks.